I stared at the laptop screen in front of me, heart thudding in my chest, but hands steady on the keyboard. On the screen, the grainy live video feed from a hidden camera in my own bedroom showed my wife Lauren kissing another man. They stumbled through the doorway of our master bedroom, oblivious to the tiny lens I had concealed on the bookshelf earlier that week. I watched in numb, silent fury as she led him by the hand toward our bed. My throat tightened, and my vision blurred at the edges. Part of me wanted to slam the laptop shut, race home and rip them apart in a rage. But I didn't move. Instead, I kept watching with cold detachment that startled even me. I cataloged every detail. The way Lauren gave him the coy smile she used to save for me. The way his hands roamed her body. The way she arched toward him. Betrayal burned hot in my veins, but I forced myself to stay calm and record everything. This footage would serve its purpose soon. After a minute, I could not bear to watch any more of their passion. I clicked the record button to ensure I had the evidence, then closed the video feed. I sat back in my office chair, trying to process the moment that had just shattered my life. My beautiful wife of 5 years, the woman I had adored and trusted, was having an affair in our marital bed, and not just a one-time lapse of judgment. Over the past few weeks, I had gathered enough clues to suspect something ongoing, but seeing it confirmed on video was a knife to the gut. I exhaled slowly, letting the initial tidal wave of hurt and anger crash over me and recede. Beneath the pain, another feeling was rising, cold and sharp. Determination. If Lauren thought she could do this to me and get away with it, she was sorely mistaken. I wasn't going to be the clueless, cuckolded husband that everyone pitied. No, I was going to make sure that she and her lover paid dearly for their treachery. They would lose everything by the time I was finished. I saved the video file to a secure drive. As I did, my mind drifted back to how things had gotten to this point. In hindsight, the warning signs had been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Lauren and I lived in a quiet, affluent suburb of a Midwestern city, the city where I grew up and built my technology company from the ground up. In my early 30s, I had become a self-made multimillionaire, a fact I once believed made Lauren proud. We met when my startup was just taking off and married after a whirlwind year of romance. She was smart, gorgeous, and charming, the perfect partner to share my success and philanthropy. Or so I thought. Looking back, I realized that after the wedding, Lauren's affection had slowly cooled. She loved the lifestyle my money provided, the designer clothes, the new car every year, the lavish parties. But something intangible was missing between us. At first, I blamed myself for working long hours. As CEO of a growing tech firm, I often spent 60-hour weeks at the office or traveling to meet investors. I thought perhaps I'd neglected her emotional needs. I tried making up for it with surprise gifts, vacations, and more time at home. Each gesture earned me a grateful kiss and smile, but those moments never lasted. I would catch her staring off in boredom or scrolling her phone absently, as if nothing in our life could hold her interest for long. Then the more telling signs emerged. There were sudden girls' nights that started happening weekly. Mysterious charges appeared on our joint credit card luxury hotel stays in our own city. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to with her. When I gently asked about them, she had smooth explanations. A spa day she forgot to mention. A gift purchase for a friend. I wanted to trust her. I was foolishly in love. But doubt crept in. I noticed her taking extra care with her appearance whenever she was going out with friends, wearing the kind of slinky dresses she hadn't worn for me in a long time. She guarded her phone like a state secret, stepping out of the room to take calls and hastily clicking off messages if I glanced over. About a month ago, I finally admitted to myself that something was very wrong. The thought of hiring a private investigator crossed my mind, but I decided against involving outsiders right away. Instead, I used the skills that helped me build my tech empire. I started with the basics, reviewing phone records and the GPS history from her car, something she didn't realize I could access. Sure enough, there were frequent, lengthy calls to a number I didn't recognize, and repeated trips to a particular downtown address. A quick online search revealed that address to be a luxury apartment building, not the spa or friend's house she claimed to visit. My chest tightened when I saw the tenant's name on the building's directory. Asterisk, asterisk, Patrick Evans, asterisk, asterisk. Patrick was a name I knew well. In fact, he was someone I considered a friend. He also happened to be my company's chief financial officer, a key executive I had trusted for years. Patrick and I met in college, and when my startup took off, I recruited him to manage the finances. Over time, he became both a colleague and a fixture in our social life. He and his wife had even joined us for dinner on multiple occasions. The thought that Patrick, smooth-talking, confident Patrick, could be the one meeting my wife in secret made me nauseous. I told myself it had to be a coincidence. Perhaps Patrick lived in that building or had some side business there. But the coincidences were piling too high. To be sure, I needed more evidence. I went further. I covertly installed discrete security cameras in our house, something I justified under the guise of general safety. One camera in the living room, one in the bedroom, one in the kitchen. If nothing happened, I'd have peace of mind and some extra security. But if my suspicions were right, those cameras would catch it. I also cross-checked Patrick's phone number from our company directory against the unknown number on Lauren's phone bill. It was a match. That confirmed it intellectually, but a part of me still clung to denial. Until tonight. Tonight, I had told Lauren I'd be working late at the office preparing a major investor presentation. It wasn't a lie, I did have work to do, but I deliberately exaggerated how long I'd be away to see if she would take the bait. Sure enough, barely an hour after I left home, my phone alerted me that the camera in our living room detected movement. Sitting at my desk at work, I opened the live feed with trembling hands. There was Lauren in our living room, pacing nervously and checking her watch. A few minutes later, the front door opened and Patrick Evans walked right into my house like he owned the place. My stomach dropped watching it live, even though I'd suspected. Lauren greeted him with a hungry kiss, and I knew my worst fears were true. Now, nearly an hour later, they were still at it upstairs, and I had seen enough. My emotions swung between icy calm and fiery anger, colliding in a storm inside me. But I realized something crucial as I stared at the dark laptop screen. I was in control. Neither of them knew I had discovered their affair. Neither suspected I was watching their every move. I had the advantage of surprise, and I intended to use it fully. If I barged in now in a fit of rage, I'd have the satisfaction of seeing their faces contort in shock and fear. But that satisfaction would be fleeting. Lauren would cry and apologize or maybe turn spiteful. Patrick would stammer excuses or bolt. It would become a messy scene and they might find ways to recover. She might beg forgiveness or lawyer up. He might try to cover his tracks at work before I could react. I wasn't going to give them that chance. I decided then and there I would not confront them tonight. Instead, I would play the long game. I would continue to act the oblivious, loving husband a little longer, all while methodically assembling a plan to bring them to their knees. They thought they were so clever, sneaking around behind my back. Soon enough, I'd show them just how foolish they were. I'd strip away the money, status, and comfort they took for granted. I'd make them feel humiliation and loss 100-fold. By the time I was finished, Lauren and Patrick would be left with nothing but the wreckage of their own choices. I stood and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window of my office, gazing out at the city lights flickering against the dark. The skyline of our Midwestern city was calm and quiet at this late hour. Were either of them even thinking about me, about the vows they had shattered? Probably not. Cheaters rarely see beyond their own gratification. I allowed myself one long breath, letting the anger wash through me and then harden into resolve. This betrayal might have broken a weaker man, but not me. I built a company from nothing. I clawed my way up with intelligence and patience. Those same traits would serve me now. My mind was already whirring with possibilities and next steps. There was much to do. Secure my finances, gather more evidence, map out the vulnerabilities of both my wife and her lover. Tonight was the turning point. The last time either of them would ever get one over on me. From here on, I would be 2 steps ahead at every turn. I took one last look at the night skyline, then shut off my office lights and grabbed my jacket. It was time to go home. By now, Lauren and Patrick would be finished with their little tryst. Perhaps he had already slipped away, sneaking back to the wife and home he was betraying as well. Perhaps Lauren was tidying herself up, erasing the traces of infidelity to greet me with a practiced smile and kiss when I walked through the door, as if nothing had happened. The thought made my skin crawl. It took all my willpower to school my features into calm neutrality as I left the office and drove back to our suburban estate. During the drive, I rehearsed the mask I needed to wear. I would not let on that anything was wrong. Not yet. If I was going to execute my plan, Lauren needed to believe I was still in the dark. So I'd play my part, the loving, unsuspecting husband who had no idea that as he toiled at work, his wife was in bed with another man. That night, when I entered our house, the air smelled faintly of Lauren's perfume and something else, a trace of Patrick's cologne, perhaps. I found her in the kitchen sipping a glass of red wine, her hair damp from a quick shower. She turned and greeted me with a bright smile, as if nothing was amiss. "Hi, honey," she said, coming over to give me a peck on the lips. I let her, managing a small, weary smile in return. Her lips tasted of wine. I wondered if she had brushed her teeth to hide the taste of him. The anger flared again inside me, but I pushed it down and asked, "How was your evening?" She launched into a well-rehearsed tale about her girls' night, some nonsense about a new rooftop bar downtown with friends. I nodded, pretending to buy every word, even as I noted the little tells that gave her away. The slight tremor in her hand when I came close, the overly casual tone that was a touch too breezy. Now that I knew the truth, her lies were almost laughably transparent. But I gave no sign. I merely told her I was exhausted from work and that the investor prep had been grueling. That part, at least, wasn't a lie. "You work too hard, Daniel," she chided softly, using the affectionate tone that once would have warmed my heart. Now it only made me feel like I was watching a stranger play acting as my wife. "I'm glad you're home. I was about to head to bed." "I'll join you in a bit," I replied, forcing a tender smile. "Just need to wrap up a couple of emails." In truth, I needed a moment alone to steady myself. She kissed my cheek and headed upstairs. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close, then exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My hands were shaking now that I was alone in the dim kitchen. The rush of seeing her and pretending everything was fine had sent adrenaline surging through me. I closed my eyes briefly. The hardest part of this ordeal was just beginning, pretending not to know. Lying to her as she lied to me would test the limits of my composure, but it was necessary. If I tipped her off too soon, she and Patrick would circle their wagons, hide evidence, maybe even twist the narrative to paint me as the bad guy. I wouldn't put it past Lauren, seeing how easily she lied to my face. Squaring my shoulders, I went upstairs to join my wife in bed, acting as if nothing in the world was wrong. As I slid under the covers, Lauren snuggled up to me, resting her head on my shoulder. "I missed you," she murmured. The audacity of that nearly made me recoil, but I kept still. "Missed you too," I whispered, staring at the dark ceiling. In that moment, I made a silent vow. Very soon, she would truly know what it meant to miss me, to miss the life she once had with me after I destroyed it and left her with nothing. The next morning, I woke at dawn as usual. For a moment, I lay in bed listening to Lauren's gentle breathing beside me and staring at the ceiling. It almost felt like any other day in our marriage. But of course, everything had changed. My resolve hardened further in the light of day. I slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake her, and pulled on my workout clothes. A 5-mile run before breakfast was part of my routine, and today, I especially needed it to burn off the simmering anger beneath my calm facade. By the time I returned, sweaty and energized, Lauren was up in the kitchen brewing coffee. She greeted me in her silk robe with an easy smile. "You're up early," she remarked, pouring me a cup. It was a casual comment any wife might make, but I scrutinized it for hidden meaning. Was that a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes? Did she worry I might have seen something last night? If she did, she hid it well. Her demeanor was the picture of normalcy. I decided to test the waters. "Yeah," I replied, taking the mug. Couldn't sleep, so I figured I'd run it off. I sipped the coffee and watched her over the rim. "How'd you sleep?" Like a baby once I finally fell asleep," Lauren said lightly, turning to fry eggs on the stove. "You know I can't really sleep until you're home. I guess I just feel safer with you here." The sheer irony of her words made me grip my coffee cup tighter. Did she even realize what she was saying? Or was she playing the role so completely that she spouted these lies automatically? I forced a chuckle. "Well, I'm here now," I said softly, stepping behind her and placing a hand on her waist. She stiffened almost imperceptibly, maybe surprised by the sudden affection. It struck me that in recent months I hadn't been physically affectionate outside the bedroom. I'd been too busy or distracted. Now I touched her because I wanted to feel her flinch. I wanted confirmation that her guilt was there under the surface. She recovered quickly, leaning back into me for a moment. "It's nice having you home," she replied. If I hadn't known better, I'd think there was genuine warmth in her tone. But I did know better. I wondered if she had already texted Patrick this morning. A simple asterisk, good morning asterisk, or an inside joke between lovers. The thought almost made me recoil, but I stayed put, playing the devoted husband. I gave her a gentle squeeze, then released her. "Smells good," I said, nodding at the eggs. "I'll grab a quick shower." Under the hot spray upstairs, I gathered my thoughts. Today would be critical. I had a board meeting later in the morning, and Patrick would be there at my side as usual. The idea of sitting next to him in a conference room, acting as if nothing was wrong, made my stomach churn. But it also steeled my resolve. I was about to give the performance of my life, pretending friendship and trust toward a man who had betrayed me in the most intimate way. If I could do that convincingly, I could keep both Patrick and Lauren in the dark while I set up their downfall. After dressing in one of my usual tailored suits, I grabbed my phone and quickly checked the security camera app. There was a new file from last night, evidence of their encounter. I encrypted it and saved a copy to a secure cloud drive only I could access. I also made a mental note to retrieve the micro SD card from the camera itself later, just in case. Redundancy was key. I wasn't going to risk losing the proof of their adultery. If all went according to plan, I'd deploy that evidence at the perfect moment. I headed back downstairs to find Lauren plating our simple breakfast. We ate together by the window, discussing trivial things, my work, a news headline, her plan to go shopping later. She was an effortless liar, sitting there talking about which boutiques she'd visit as if nothing was wrong. I wondered if shopping was code for something else today. Perhaps a midday rendezvous with Patrick while I was at the office. The bitter taste of that thought lingered even after I drained my coffee. Before leaving for work, I indulged in one more bit of deception. I walked over to Lauren at the sink and wrapped my arms around her from behind. I felt her tense for a half second before she relaxed into me. "I love you," I murmured near her ear. It wasn't something I'd said often in the past few months, not from lack of love, at least until last night, but perhaps out of complacency. This morning, I wanted to gauge her reaction. She hesitated just a beat before turning off the faucet. Then she turned in my arms and gave me a radiant smile. "I love you too, Daniel." It sounded almost convincing. Almost. I pressed a light kiss to her cheek, then let her go. "Have a great day," I said as I picked up my briefcase. "You too," she chimed, towel drying her hands and waving as I headed out. As I walked to my car, I allowed my face to settle into a grim scowl. Being that affectionate with her had been harder than I expected. Her touch, her scent, everything that used to bring me comfort was now repulsive in a visceral way. But I'd gotten through it, and if she suspected nothing, I was free to proceed. On the drive to the office, I made 2 phone calls through my car's hands-free system. The first was to my personal attorney, Edward Grant, Edward had handled legal matters for me over the years, contracts, estate planning, and yes, the prenuptial agreement Lauren signed before we married. We hadn't spoken in a while, but I needed his counsel now. I left a brief voicemail. "Edward, it's Daniel Montgomery. I have a situation. Need to discuss our prenup and some other matters. It's urgent. Please call me." I kept it vague. I didn't want to say more until we could speak in private. My second call was to Tom Whitaker, the head of IT at my company. I asked him to meet me privately first thing when I arrived. As much as it galled me to use company resources for what was partly a personal vendetta, Patrick's affair had likely bled into our professional sphere. And that was absolutely my business. If Patrick had used company email, phone, or funds in the course of this affair, I wanted to know. Not only would it give me ammunition to fire him for cause, but it would be one more nail in his coffin. Traffic was light, so I reached Montgomery Tech headquarters by 8 a.m., a sleek glass building proudly bearing my name. I squared my shoulders, donned a confident smile, and strode through the lobby. A few employees waved or said hello. I returned their greetings as usual. My assistant Karen was already at her desk when I stepped off the elevator to the executive floor. "Morning, Daniel," Karen said brightly. "Morning," I replied, then added in a lower voice, "Hold my calls for about 20 minutes, please. I need to catch up with Tom about something." She nodded without question. One benefit of cultivating a loyal staff was that they trusted my judgment and didn't pry. I made my way to my office and found Tom waiting by the door as requested. Tom was a stocky guy with keen eyes for cybersecurity. We shook hands and I ushered him inside, closing the door behind us. I got straight to the point. I met privately with Tom and instructed him to discreetly audit Patrick's company communications and expenses for any hint of misconduct. He needed no further explanation beyond the basics. Patrick was using company resources to facilitate an affair and promised to have answers by day's end. True to his word, a few hours later, Tom handed me a confidential report. Scanning it, my suspicions were confirmed 100 times over. There were personal emails between Patrick and Lauren sent from his work account, including one where he wrote he missed her last night. There were phone logs of dozens of calls from Patrick's office line to Lauren. Even his expense reports betrayed him. A hotel room charge and a pricey dinner, both filed under fake business pretexts on nights I was out of town. The audacity and carelessness of their actions made my blood boil, but it also gave me exactly what I needed. I now had concrete proof not only of their affair, but of Patrick's violation of company trust. He was finished, and he didn't even know it yet. At the morning executive board meeting, I sat at the head of the table with Patrick by my side, acting for all the world like everything was normal. He presented the quarterly financials confidently, and I chimed in with praise as usual. To any outsider, we were the picture of a cohesive team. Only I noticed the slight tremor in his hand and the way he avoided my eyes. During the meeting, his phone buzzed with a text. Lauren's name flashed on the screen before he hastily flipped it over. A spike of anger went through me, but I maintained an impassive front. By the time the meeting ended, I'd kept my composure flawlessly. Patrick casually invited me to lunch afterward, as he often did. I forced a polite smile and declined, citing a client call. He shrugged, suspecting nothing, and headed off. The second he was out of sight, my smile dropped. My performance had been exhausting but necessary. Now it was time to finalize the steps for their downfall. Just before noon, Edward returned my call. We arranged to meet at his firm's office in the late afternoon. I told him I'd bring evidence and discuss strategy regarding the prenup and divorce. He readily agreed to clear his schedule. My lawyer was as no-nonsense as they come. I knew he'd have everything prepared once I explained the situation. I also shot a brief text to my PR consultant, **Sarah Wilkins, **, whom I kept on retainer for my company. I simply told her I might soon need advice handling a sensitive personal matter, and to be ready. She responded immediately with, "Understood, standing by." If, or rather, when word got out about my split with Lauren and the reasons for it, I wanted to be ahead of the narrative. Ruining Lauren and Patrick socially would be much easier if I controlled the information flow. With my plans in motion and evidence in hand, I took a moment alone in my office. I locked the door, sat at my computer, and assembled a secure folder labeled Justice containing everything. The damning video from the bedroom camera, the text and call logs, copies of incriminating emails, expense report printouts, and a written timeline of key events. Documenting it in factual detail helped keep me objective. This wasn't just personal. In many ways, I was treating it like a business problem to solve with cold, hard proof. By mid-afternoon, Edward's office confirmed our meeting time, and all the pieces were lining up. I steeled myself for what came next. The remainder of the day, I kept a low profile at the office, avoiding Patrick except for necessary work matters. If he noticed anything off about me, He didn't show it. He was likely far too confident that I was oblivious. I left the office a bit early to head downtown to my lawyer's firm. As I drove, I mentally reviewed my arsenal. Legal leverage through the prenup and evidence of infidelity, professional leverage through evidence of Patrick's misconduct, and social leverage via Sarah and my own connections to control the narrative. I had always been meticulous in business. Applying those same principles to exact revenge felt not only natural, but oddly cathartic. Edward greeted me in a private conference room with a firm handshake and a concerned, professional smile. He was a tall, silver-haired man in his 50s who had seen his share of corporate battles and ugly divorces. As soon as the door closed, his expression turned serious. "Daniel, I got the gist of your message. What's going on?" he asked, gesturing for me to sit. I sat across from him at the polished oak table. "It's about Lauren," I began quietly. "She's been unfaithful. I have evidence of a long-term affair." My voice was steady, as if discussing a business deal, but saying it out loud still brought a bitter taste. Edward's brow furrowed as he nodded. "I'm very sorry to hear that," he said sincerely. "How do you want to proceed?" I didn't hesitate. "I want to divorce her, and I want it on terms entirely favorable to me. I won't reward her for what she's done." My tone was steely. "We have a prenuptial agreement. I trust it's still ironclad?" Edward gave a thin, confident smile. "I drafted it myself, so yes, it will hold, especially given these circumstances. To refresh your memory, it essentially limits her financial take if she commits adultery. A modest lump sum and minimal alimony, that's it. If she tried to contest it, with the evidence you have of infidelity, no judge would be sympathetic to her." I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Even though I was confident in the prenup, hearing him confirm it lifted a weight from my shoulders. At most, Lauren would walk away with a pittance compared to my net worth. "Good," I said. "Can we get the divorce filing ready in the next day or two?" "Certainly," Edward replied, already jotting notes. "We'll cite irreconcilable differences or adultery, depending on state law. Either way, the prenup defines the financial terms. She might try to challenge it, but given her conduct and the proof, she'd have no leg to stand on. The key is serving her and getting her to sign a settlement aligned with the prenup as soon as possible. Does she know that you know?" "No," I said. "She has no idea. I've kept it completely under wraps. Same goes for the other party." I didn't bother hiding who it was. "It's Patrick Evans." Edward's eyes flashed with recognition and a hint of anger on my behalf. He had met Patrick at functions before. "I see. All right. The element of surprise is yours then. We might even manage to get her to sign an uncontested agreement if she's caught off guard and sees no alternative. Especially if we present proof of the affair, she'll know fighting it is futile." "That's my plan," I affirmed. "Confront her with overwhelming evidence and leave her no wiggle room." Edward gave me a cautious look. "I understand you're angry, Daniel. You have every right. Just remember to keep everything within legal bounds. Use the evidence, yes, but don't do anything that could be construed as harassment or vindictiveness beyond the scope of the divorce. The last thing you need is for her to spin around and claim you were threatening or abusive." I nodded sharply. "Don't worry, I'm not going to lay a finger on her, but I will be *firm*. I almost smirked at the understatement. If Edward knew the extent of what I had planned beyond the courtroom, he might have raised an eyebrow, but he didn't press further. We spent the next 30 minutes reviewing details. I handed over copies of key evidence, a still frame from the video showing Lauren kissing Patrick in our foyer, and a printout of an incriminating email exchange. That alone would establish adultery. We agreed on a timeline. The divorce petition would be ready the next day, and I would choose when to have her served. I opted to do it personally. I wanted the satisfaction of handing her those papers myself. As I left Edward's office, dusk was falling. I sat in my car for a moment, checking my phone. To my surprise, I had a text from an unknown number. Asterisk. Mr. Montgomery, this is Anna Evans. I'd like to speak with you if possible. Anna Evans, Patrick's wife. A pang of empathy hit me. The poor woman likely had her own suspicions or had discovered something. She was an unwitting collateral victim in this mess. Bringing Anna into the loop could be beneficial. Not only did she deserve the truth about her husband, but if we coordinated, it could amplify the impact on Patrick. If she planned to confront or divorce him, doing so in tandem with my moves would make his downfall complete. I texted back, Anna, I'm available to meet. I assume this is about Patrick. Name a time and place that suits you. She replied promptly, suggesting a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town that very evening. I agreed. After grabbing a quick bite alone, I drove to meet her. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. Anna sat in a corner booth, looking small and anxious. I recognized her immediately, a petite brunette with kind eyes, though tonight they were red-rimmed as if she'd been crying. I slid into the seat across from her. Anna, thank you for reaching out. I'm so sorry about everything, I began gently. She swallowed and gave a shaky nod. Thank you for meeting me, Daniel. I found some messages on Patrick's iPad between him and Lauren. Her voice trembled. At first I didn't want to believe it, but there were too many. He's been cheating on me with your wife, hasn't he? Her eyes brimmed with tears. Seeing her pain made my anger toward Patrick flare even hotter. I kept my voice calm. Yes, he has. Plain and direct, no point sugarcoating. I'm sorry, Anna. I found out recently myself. I've been gathering proof and planning my next steps. A tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it quickly. How long have you known? A few weeks, I admitted. I needed to be absolutely sure and have a plan before acting. Believe me, I know how you feel. It's devastating. Those words hung heavy in the air. No platitude could cover the betrayal we'd both suffered. Anna looked down, twisting a tissue in her hands. I feel so stupid, she whispered. All those nights he said he was working late or on business trips. I never suspected. He's always been so charming, you know? She let out a bitter little laugh through her tears. I should have seen the signs. I shook my head. The fault is on them, not us. They lied and hid it well. They wanted us in the dark, and we were until we weren't. It was oddly comforting to reassure her. It reminded me I wasn't alone in this. She wiped her eyes and straightened a bit, resolve creeping into her expression. I've already contacted a divorce attorney. I haven't confronted Patrick yet. He doesn't know I know. I wanted to talk to you first. I thought you should know, and maybe we could coordinate? Her voice wavered on the last word, uncertain if I'd welcome that. I gave a small, reassuring smile. I think that's an excellent idea. If we coordinate our actions, it can make both of our cases stronger, and it will certainly make the consequences hit them harder. I didn't even bother to hide the grim satisfaction in my tone. Anna caught it, and a flicker of vindication lit her eyes. We spent the next 15 minutes quietly comparing notes over untouched coffees. I filled her in on what I had, the video, the emails, the expense report evidence. She was shocked at the lengths Patrick had gone, and furious about how he'd misused family time and money. In turn, she told me they had 2 young children, thankfully staying with their grandmother tonight, and that she fully intended to file for divorce on grounds of adultery. Patrick had no clue. He was supposedly on an overnight business trip at the moment, which we both understood likely meant a secret rendezvous, possibly even with Lauren. When Anna mentioned Patrick was ostensibly on an overnight business trip, I realized with a jolt that he and Lauren were likely together at that very moment. The knowledge was like fuel on a fire, but it also opened a strategic window. If they were currently feeling secure on a secret getaway, we could use the time before their return to set the final trap. I shared this thought with Anna, and she agreed to coordinate timing with me. We would strike when they came back, catching them utterly off guard. Anna looked at me questioningly as I fell silent, jaw clenched. I hadn't meant to scare her with my intensity. She reached across the table and touched my hand gently. "I'm sorry. This must be so hard for you," she said softly. "You've nothing to apologize for," I assured her, relaxing my hand under hers. "In fact, it might be a good thing they're together now. They'll be coming home completely unaware. We can make sure the hammer falls on both of them at once." She nodded, understanding. "What can I do?" she asked quietly. "Just do what you're planning. File for divorce. Have him served as soon as you can. Maybe in a public way for maximum effect. I'll coordinate with you on timing so it coincides with my confrontation with them." I paused, then added, "Also, if you're comfortable with it, I won't shy away from the truth when people inevitably talk about what happened. I think it's important that everyone knows exactly why our marriages ended, so they can't twist it." Anna's eyes hardened, and she agreed. "After what he did, I have no interest in protecting Patrick's reputation. I'll be honest with anyone who asks." Then her face fell a bit. "I do worry about my children in all this. They're young now, but someday they'll know." I softened my tone. "We don't have to make a public spectacle beyond our circles. I just want the community and colleagues to know the truth, that you and I were the innocent parties. We can keep the kids out of it." She looked relieved at that. We exchanged contact information for our attorneys to possibly synchronize filings, and agreed to keep each other updated over the next day or 2. As we stood to leave, she surprised me by giving me a brief, heartfelt hug. "Thank you," she whispered, "for listening, and for making sure they don't get away with it." I patted her back gently. "We'll get through this," I replied. "Take care of yourself and those kids, okay?" Walking her to her car, I felt some bitterness melt away, replaced by determination. I had an ally who understood exactly what I felt. It strengthened my conviction that what I was doing wasn't just petty revenge. It was justice. Driving home that night, I made a flurry of calls and messages, setting final pieces in place. I talked to Edward, confirming he'd have my filing ready by morning, and arranging for a process server to be on standby. I left a message for Tom at work, despite the late hour, to expect that I'd likely be terminating Patrick tomorrow, and that security should be discreetly prepared in case of any scene. Tom, ever efficient, texted back a simple, "Understood." Finally, I messaged Sarah to alert her that tomorrow's the day, and to be ready for any necessary PR moves. She replied with a thumbs up and assurance that her team would stand ready to assist. My last task before bed was retrieving the micro SD card from the hidden bedroom camera and locking it in my home safe alongside printed copies of key evidence. Lauren still hadn't returned home by midnight, confirming that she was indeed spending the night with Patrick. I barely slept, adrenaline coursing through me. Tomorrow would be the day everything changed. The next morning, Lauren still hadn't come home by the time I got up. Around 7 a.m., as I was drinking coffee in my home office and reviewing the plan one last time, I heard the front door open quietly. Her tentative footsteps sounded in the foyer. Showtime. I stepped out to meet her, coffee mug in hand. Lauren jumped slightly, clearly not expecting to see me. She was wearing the same clothes as yesterday, a sure sign she hadn't planned on staying out. Her eyes were wide, a mixture of guilt and worry flashing across them for an instant before she forced a smile. "Morning," I said calmly, sipping my coffee. "Where have you been?" Lauren froze for half a heartbeat, then let out a forced little laugh. "Morning, darling. You're up early again," she said, trying to sound casual. "I ended up staying over at Marissa's place last night. You remember my friend with the gallery event? It ran late and she insisted I crash at her house rather than drive home so late. I didn't want to wake you, so..." She babbled on, spinning her tale. Her hair was slightly messy, and I could smell the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne clinging to her. I simply nodded slowly. "Marissa's, huh? I wish you'd called. I woke up and you weren't here. I was worried," I lied with a mild, hurt tone. She flushed and stepped closer, her eyes softening in apparent remorse. "I'm so sorry," she murmured, placing a hand on my forearm. "It was a last-minute thing. I should have texted. I just had a bit too much wine and fell asleep on her couch. It was irresponsible of me." She gazed up at me, pleading. "Forgive me?" I looked down at her hand on my arm and managed a weak smile. "Of course. I'm just glad you're safe." Gently, I removed her hand under the pretense of moving to set my coffee mug in the sink. "I have to get to the office early today. Big day ahead." That was certainly true. She seemed relieved that I wasn't pressing further. "Oh? Anything special at work?" she asked carefully. "Board business, financial stuff," I shrugged, grabbing my briefcase. I gave her a quick peck on the cheek, making her flinch just a little, and headed for the door. "Get some rest. You look tired," I added, unable to resist the jab. Then I walked out, leaving her standing in the kitchen, likely thanking her lucky stars that I appeared none the wiser. The stage was set. By the end of this day, the deceit and lies would be ripped away, and Lauren and Patrick would face the ruin they had brought upon themselves. I arrived at the office with steely focus. All the key pieces were primed. Security was quietly on alert. HR had prepared termination papers for Patrick, and Edward had emailed me the finalized divorce petition for Lauren. Copies of every crucial piece of evidence were in my briefcase. The trap was ready to spring. Late that morning, I asked my assistant to page Patrick to my office. My voice was calm as I told her we had a sensitive financial issue to discuss. Within minutes, Patrick knocked and stepped inside, looking curious and unworried. I closed the door behind him. "Have a seat," I said evenly, moving behind my desk. Patrick sat, still oblivious, though I detected a slight apprehension in his eyes. Perhaps my tone was too formal. "What's up, Dan?" he asked, aiming for casual. I noticed his fingers tapping nervously on the chair arm. I didn't sit. Instead, I remained standing, one hand resting on my desk chair. "Patrick," I began quietly, "I'd like to discuss some discrepancies I've come across." He stiffened ever so slightly, but tried to chuckle. "Discrepancies? Something wrong with the ledgers?" "You could say that," I replied. I opened a drawer and pulled out a printed sheet, the flagged expense report from Tom, and placed it on the desk between us. For instance, this hotel bill in March, and this expensive dinner at Le Jardin. His eyes flicked down to the paper and widened. He opened his mouth to speak, but I barreled on. You listed those as business expenses, but I happen to know there was no client dinner that night. In fact, I suspect it was a very different sort of meeting. My voice hardened on the last words. Patrick's face flushed. He shifted in his seat. Maybe I mislabeled a personal expense or two. I can reimburse those if there's an issue, he stammered, trying to muster his usual charm and failing. No need to get upset over a couple of fraudulent charges? I interrupted sharply. No, I take financial impropriety very seriously. But you know what I take even more seriously, Patrick? I leaned forward, bracing my palms on the desk and locking eyes with him. Betrayal. The blood drained from his face. The office was dead silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Patrick opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like a deer in headlights. Daniel, Save it, I snapped, straightening up. I began pacing slowly in front of my desk. Some primal part of me enjoyed how he recoiled as I moved. I know everything. Asterisk. Everything asterisk, Patrick. The lies, the sneaking around, all of it. I grabbed the stack of papers from my briefcase, printouts of emails, phone logs, a still photo of him entering my house with Lauren. I tossed them onto the desk in front of him. He glanced down and visibly blanched at what he saw. A strangled noise escaped his throat. Dan, I can explain, he finally managed, voice cracking. It just happened. We never meant to hurt me, I supplied, my tone dripping with scorn. My hands were clenched into fists. I forced them open. Don't give me that. You knew exactly what you were doing, sneaking into asterisk my asterisk home, into asterisk my asterisk bed, with asterisk my asterisk wife. I advanced a step toward him. He shrank back in the chair, sweat beading on his brow. How long, Patrick? How long have you been screwing Lauren behind my back? He glanced at the door, perhaps gauging if he could bolt. But there was nowhere to go. He hung his head. 2 years, he whispered, voice full of shame. It started after that Christmas party. You were always so busy and He trailed off as he saw my expression twist with rage at his attempt to explain. 2 years, I repeated softly. It wasn't news. My evidence suggested at least that long, but hearing him say it made my jaw clench until it hurt. 2 years of them carrying on, lying to my face. I had to inhale slowly to keep control. Daniel, I know it's unforgivable, Patrick babbled, misreading my silence as an opening. But I did fall in love with her, and she said she felt the same. We never set out to do this. It just... An accident, was it? I spat, voice rising. You accidentally fell into bed with my wife hundreds of times over 2 years? Don't insult me. My contempt was scalding. His excuses died. He hung his head, tears springing in his eyes. You have to believe me, I never wanted to hurt you. You're my friend. That word made me snap. Don't you dare call me your friend. I slammed my palm down on the desk. Patrick flinched violently. A friend wouldn't do what you did. A decent human being wouldn't. I stepped back, raking a hand through my hair as I fought the urge to smash his face into the desk. My rage was a live wire, but I reminded myself I wanted him ruined, not bleeding. Unless he gave me reason. He broke down then, a sob choking out. Please, I know I betrayed you. I was selfish and stupid. If I could take it all back. He looked up at me, eyes wet and desperate. I've ruined everything, haven't I? Yes, I said flatly. You have. You ruined our friendship. You ruined my trust. And soon, you'll have ruined your own career. I let that sink in. Did you really think I'd keep you on as CFO after this? That I'd let a lying, backstabbing cheat run my finances? He blanched. Daniel, please, I'll resign quietly if that's what you want. But don't, his voice cracked. Don't destroy me. I can make amends, I swear. I barked a mirthless laugh. The nerve of this man. Destroy you? Oh, Patrick, that's already done. I nodded toward the door. Through the glass wall, he could likely make out two of our building security guards positioned unobtrusively nearby. Patrick's eyes widened in alarm. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. But either way, you're finished here. Effective immediately. I lowered my voice to a cold hiss. And don't think it's just this company. By the time I'm through, every respectable firm in this city will know exactly why *Golden Boy Patrick Evans fell from grace. No one will touch you. He gave a strangled moan and buried his face in his hands. My wife, my kids, he mumbled into his palms. Anna, oh God. He realized, as I had hoped, the full scope of his impending losses. Anna knows, I said curtly. His head snapped up, eyes wild with shock. I allowed myself a small, grim smile. That's right, she found out everything. By now, she's likely filed for divorce. So yes, you haven't just lost your job today. You're about to lose your family, too. He stared at me, mouth agape, utterly broken. A long silence hung between us. He looked so pitiful, a far cry from the confident, suave executive I once knew. But any sympathy I might have felt was drowned by the memory of him and Lauren entwined on that video feed. I still had one more surprise. I stepped around the desk and unceremoniously yanked Patrick's cell phone from the pocket of his jacket. Too defeated to resist, he just watched with glassy eyes as I unlocked it. He'd never changed the passcode I'd learned from spying on him weeks ago. I typed out a quick text to Lauren from his number. Come to Daniel's office right now, emergency. Then I hit send and tossed the phone onto my desk. Patrick blinked, coming out of his stupor slightly. Why involve her? He croaked. Just leave her out of this, Daniel. It's me you're angry with. I cut him off with an icy glare. She's just as guilty. You think I'm going to let her off easy? Not a chance. He opened his mouth as if to argue further, then wisely closed it. A fresh tear rolled down his cheek. Even now it seemed he wanted to protect her. How touching. It only cemented my decision to make them face me together. We waited in weighted silence. Patrick sat slumped in the chair, occasionally wiping his eyes, while I stood by the door with my arms crossed. My heart was thudding with anticipation. Within 10 minutes, I spotted Lauren through the frosted glass wall, hurrying down the corridor. Time for the final reckoning. I opened the door just as she reached it, and she nearly ran into me. Daniel? She exclaimed, confused and slightly out of breath. She must have practically sprinted over from wherever she was, likely thinking something terrible had happened. She peered into my office and saw Patrick sitting there, head in his hands. Patrick? What's going on? She asked, alarm in her voice. Come in, Lauren, I said calmly. I gently but firmly took her by the elbow and guided her inside. She looked from me to Patrick and back, clearly sensing the tension. I closed the door. Her eyes flickered to the two security guards visible down the hall, then to Patrick's blotchy, tear-streaked face. You're scaring me. Both of you, she stammered, forcing a laugh that sounded shrill. What is this? I stepped forward, so I faced them both, blocking the door. My wife looked as lovely and put together as ever today, in her cream blouse and pencil skirt, the picture of a respectable woman. It made me sick. This, I said quietly, is the end of the charade. The truth comes out today, Lauren. Right now, in fact. I paused, watching the apprehension flood her features. I know about you and Patrick. I've known for weeks. Lauren reacted as if slapped, inhaling sharply, color draining from her face. She opened her mouth, to deny it, no doubt. But no words came. Don't bother lying, I warned softly. I picked up the evidence packet from my desk and fanned out some pages. A printed still of her entwined with Patrick on our living room couch. A copy of a text exchange between them. Emails, messages, videos, I have it all. I watched you with him, Lauren, in our bedroom. My voice trembled with barely restrained hurt and fury. She clapped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide with horror. Oh my God, she choked out. Realizing denial was futile, her knees gave way and she collapsed into the second chair next to Patrick. Instinctively, Patrick reached out as if to steady her, but I barked, "Don't touch her." He quickly withdrew his arm. For a long moment, the only sound was Lauren's ragged breathing. She stared at the floor, tears beginning to patter onto her lap. Patrick kept his face in his hands, as if wishing he were invisible. I started pacing slowly before them. All the power in the room was mine, and they knew it. I welcomed you both into my life, I began, voice low and quivering with anger. Patrick, I trusted you as my partner and friend. And you, Lauren. I turned toward my wife. She flinched at the raw anguish in my voice. I loved you. I built a life with you. And in return, you made a fool of me. My throat tightened, but I pressed on. You lied to me, both of you, over and over, in my own home, in my own bed. Lauren sobbed into her hand. Daniel, I am so sorry, she whispered, looking up with mascara-lined tears streaking her cheeks. I never ever wanted to hurt you. I was lonely and you were always so busy, and Patrick... Her voice cracked. It was a terrible mistake. The worst mistake of my life. She reached a hand out toward me, shaking. If there's any part of you that can forgive, stop. I held up a hand, stepping back out of reach. Don't you dare ask for forgiveness now. Not after 2 years of this. I could feel the ache in my chest, but I steeled myself against her tears. Maybe I wasn't a perfect husband. Maybe I worked too much. But I didn't deserve this asterisk. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders heaving. You're right, she wept. You didn't. I have no excuse. I'm so sorry. Her voice dissolved into sobs. I hardened my heart. I'm not here for apologies, I said. Pulling a manila envelope from my briefcase, I tossed it onto her lap. I'm here to give you these. With trembling fingers, Lauren pulled out the documents within. I saw her eyes scan the top of the first page. Asterisk petition for dissolution of marriage asterisk. A strangled whimper escaped her. She flipped through and saw the signature lines, the stark language of the settlement. Divorce, she gasped softly. Then her eyes widened as she realized what the terms were. Divorce, I confirmed. As per our prenup, you remember that document you signed before our wedding? The one you probably assumed I'd never enforce? It limits your settlement to essentially nothing, given your adultery. I kept my tone matter-of-fact, almost businesslike. It's all laid out. You'll get a small lump sum, and that's about it. She stared at the papers in shock, lips moving soundlessly. A flush of anger crept up her neck. Anger, perhaps, that I was actually doing this, and that she would walk away nearly empty-handed. So that's it? She choked out. After 5 years, you just... Throw me away with nothing? I laughed bitterly. You threw us away when you hopped into his bed, I snarled, pointing at Patrick. Lauren cringed, tears streaming anew. Patrick whispered, I'm so sorry, but I ignored him. Fighting to steady my voice, I continued. Financially, you get what the prenup grants. Socially? I gave a cold shrug. Everyone will know exactly why this marriage ended. Did you think I'd protect your reputation after what you did? Think again. Please, please don't do this, Lauren begged through tears. I have nowhere to go, no one. If everyone knows, her voice broke. I know I did wrong, but do you really have to ruin me utterly? I regarded her, dispassionate. This was the woman I had once planned a future with, now reduced to a sobbing mess, pleading at my feet. I felt a pang deep in my gut, but I forced it away. You should have considered consequences before you slept with my best friend, I said quietly. Actions have consequences, Lauren. You and Patrick are about to learn that in full. I stepped back and surveyed them. My wife collapsed in misery, my former friend shattered and weeping, and me calm, resolute, maybe a little hollowed out inside, but standing tall. In that moment, I felt a grim, righteous sense of justice. Doesn't matter now, I said, voice weary. The adrenaline of confrontation was ebbing, leaving behind a profound sadness under my anger. Our marriage is over. Your secret fling, whatever it really was, is exposed, and Patrick's career is finished. I shifted my gaze to him, full of contempt. Pack up your office. Security will escort you out. He nodded weakly, wiping his face. Lauren gazed at me as if I were a stranger. Perhaps she'd never imagined I had such ruthlessness in me. Through her tears, I saw true regret dawning, too late. I moved to the door and opened it. The two security guards snapped to attention. Please escort Mr. Evans to his desk to collect his things and then off the premises, I instructed coolly. One guard stepped in and firmly but gently took Patrick by the arm. Patrick stood on unsteady legs. As he passed by me, he paused, eyes brimming. I'm so sorry, Dan, he whispered. It was all he could offer. I stared at him, expression stony. Goodbye, Patrick. My voice held no warmth. He lowered his head and allowed himself to be led out like a prisoner on death row. I turned back to Lauren. She was still clutching the divorce papers in numb disbelief. What do I do now? She asked in a small, broken voice. It almost made me falter. This was a woman I had once deeply loved, now utterly destroyed. Almost, I pitied her. Almost. You find yourself a lawyer and sign those papers, I said, my tone softer but still firm. You'll get what the prenup entitles you to. I'm not leaving you destitute, Lauren, but you won't have the life you're used to, and you'll need to move out of the house within the week. I'll have my assistant coordinate a time for you to collect your belongings when I'm not there. She bowed her head, silent tears dripping onto the petition. I stood there not really knowing what else to say. Any love I'd once had for her was buried under layers of hurt and anger. In the end, I simply said, "Goodbye, Lauren." Then I walked out, leaving her crumpled in the chair, divorce papers clutched to her chest, as if they were the only solid thing left in her world. The fallout in the days and weeks that followed was brutal, but strangely affirming. Word of the scandal spread quietly at first, then with increasing clarity. I didn't publicly broadcast the details, but I didn't hide them either. Within our social circle and the company, it became known that Lauren had cheated on me with Patrick and that I had decisively handled the situation. Lauren moved out of our home within a week. She didn't contest the divorce terms. Faced with the ironclad prenup and her own guilt, she signed the papers without a fight. The legal process was swift. A month later, I sat in a courtroom as a judge formally dissolved our marriage. Lauren appeared only once, looking gaunt and grief-stricken as she agreed to the settlement. The sum she received was enough for a basic restart, a far cry from the luxury she'd enjoyed with me, but she wouldn't be destitute. Even so, without my income, she had to give up most of her luxuries. I heard she moved in with a cousin in a neighboring town, far from the whispers and stares of our community. As for Patrick, his descent was even steeper. I terminated him for cause with documented evidence of his expense fraud. He was left with no severance and a tarnished professional record. True to my word, I quietly let a few industry colleagues know the broad strokes, that he had grossly violated my trust personally and professionally. The message spread in our circles. He found himself virtually unemployable in our city's reputable firms. Anna proceeded with her own divorce. I kept in touch with her occasionally. Our shared ordeal forged an odd camaraderie. She updated me that Patrick had moved into a small apartment and was struggling to maintain visitation rights to their kids. She got the house and primary custody, and rightly so. About a month after the confrontation, I received a handwritten letter from Patrick. In it, he apologized profusely once more and said he was leaving town to stay with a brother on the West Coast, hoping to rebuild his life far from the mess here. I read the letter, then folded it away without reply. I felt no satisfaction in his misery, just a grim acknowledgement that the consequences had played out. There was still work to do on myself. In the first weeks after the dust settled, I rode a roller coaster of emotions: anger, relief, grief for the love I thought I had, even moments of emptiness. I threw myself into work at the office and into my charitable foundation, focusing on things that still gave me purpose. I also started seeing a therapist, something I never imagined I'd do, to help process the betrayal and begin rebuilding my ability to trust. It helped. And so, life moved on. The void left by Lauren's absence at home slowly filled with new routines. I found myself working out more regularly in the mornings, sleeping better at night without the constant suspicion and stress. I even hosted a dinner for a few close friends, the first gathering at my house since everything happened, and realized as laughter and conversation flowed that I was going to be okay. Perhaps better than okay. One evening, about 6 months after the divorce, I sat on my back patio with a glass of bourbon, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. I reflected on the whirlwind my life had been, the love that curdled into betrayal, the calculated revenge, and now the aftermath. In that calm moment, I didn't feel like smiling, but I also didn't feel like crying. What I felt was a deep, quiet sense of triumph. Not a jubilant victory, but a solid reassurance that I hadn't been defeated by what happened. I had taken the worst pain of my life and met it on my own terms. Lauren and Patrick had paid the price for their betrayal. They lost everything that truly mattered: money, status, respect, relationships. I had seen to that as surely as they had once stolen my peace of mind. And while revenge is no cure for a broken heart, it brought me the closure and justice I needed. I could finally sleep at night knowing those who wronged me were held accountable. As the last glow of sunlight faded, I raised my glass in a silent toast to endings and to beginnings. The price of betrayal had been paid in full. And for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to turn the page and see what tomorrow would bring.